even Bob Ferguson, who I think very little of, the governor of Washington State, came out, at least at the beginning of the year, in his inaugural address, and he said, look, we need to be honest with ourselves about how we spent our way into a $14 billion budget deficit. We need to start with cuts before we even consider taxes. Oh, Democrats in the legislature did not take too kindly about that. They started leaking out negative stories about Bob Ferguson, basically warning him, putting him on notice. Hey, you better fall in line, buddy. You better fall in line with the progressive Democrats and our tax and spend obsession, or we're coming for you. So even Bob Ferguson knows, like, this isn't really fiscally responsible. So facing a big budget deficit, I'll give you the highline items. So on Saturday, again on the weekend, as if they can't do this during the weekdays when people are paying attention, no, they have to do it on a Saturday. Democrats in the state Senate, there were only 2 Democratic senators who voted with Republicans against the budget. They passed the largest package of tax increases in the state's history. Billions of dollars in tax increases. And we know how they're going to spin it. I'll play some of the cuts from the debate on Saturday in a moment, but they're going to spin it as this was our only option. We're taxing the rich, and that's the only way we can avoid deep, hurtful, devastating cuts to our state budget, which none of that is true. None of that is true. So the budget that they passed on Saturday in the state Senate includes a couple things. It includes an unlimited property tax increase. So when you hear them out there saying we're taxing the rich, we're taxing big business, they just passed an unlimited property tax increase. 20 or so years ago, voters in this state said we want to limit property tax increases to 1% annually without coming to a vote of the people. So right now, that's pretty clear. Hey, Dow Constantine, King County Executive, wherever it is, we can increase your property taxes by 1%. And if we want to do more than that, we have to come ask your permission. Seems pretty reasonable, right? Voters thought so 20 years ago, but now they're upending that. And they're tying property tax increases to 2 things, inflation and growth, population growth, with no cap. So now they could come out and say, 9% increase in your property taxes. People won't be able to afford it. I hear from so many people who aren't low income, who have two incomes, working class households, who are saying this will tax me out of my home. At a time when Democrats are saying, oh, it's so expensive to live here. You know, the rent's too damn high, and they're trying to pass rent control. And they don't think that increasing property taxes at that rate without going to a vote of the people is going to make it even more expensive and in turn raise rents because somebody has to own the unit that's being rented out and that person is paying the property taxes. This is like second grade stuff. It's really wild. So they passed that. They also passed out of the Senate the business tax that would expand the failed Seattle Jumpstart tax across the entire state. Even when Seattle's mayor is saying, hey, this is devastating our economy. They don't care. Passed across the entire state. The wealth tax, where they're saying if you have more than $50 million in wealth, we're going to tax you on unrealized gains. Also an increase in the B&O tax. And then they slipped in some things that they thought would sound nice, like a 0.5% cut to the sales tax. Because that's what they're going to message on. Hey, we're cutting the sales tax. We're helping you regular people. And then we're going to stick it to big businesses. So all of this will be utterly devastating for our state's economy. And again, that's not an opinion. That's not my opinion. You look at what's happening in Seattle and you just take that and you expand it across the whole state. Why would what's happening in Seattle not happen statewide? Why would it be any different? Amazon started to leave, took 10,000 jobs out of Seattle over the payroll tax that was passed in 2020, and they moved them to Bellevue. You don't think they'll move them out of Bellevue to a different state when that tax that they left Seattle to escape goes statewide? Of course they will. I would. Of course they will. They don't have to sit and suffer in a state that doesn't want them here, in a state that seeks out to punish them despite the massive economic boost that they give to the state. But as complimentary as I am about Amazon, just wait, because Amazon has no backbone, neither does Microsoft or any of the big tech companies. We'll get to them in a second. But I want to focus my ire on Democrats. So when this went to a vote, and I should mention, Senate Republicans introduced their own budget proposal that had no big cuts, no big new taxes. They were able to figure out a way to balance the budget in a way that wouldn't be devastating, as Democrats said. But Democrats didn't even want to take a look at it because they're actually not interested in any sort of like responsible budgeting. They want to tax as much as they can and get away with it. Not to fund necessary things, to fund dumb shit. Like the hockey lessons for immigrant kids in Seattle. Cool concept, love it, not something the government should be paying for. But they've already made all these promises to all these donors and nonprofits who support their campaigns and, deal in race and social justice and quote unquote help the homeless without actually making our homeless problem any better. So they have to keep that money funneling out. So some of it comes back into their coffers and their political campaigns. So they can't rock the boat at all. They just want to tax as much as possible. So Senator June Robinson was the Democrat kind of leading the budget efforts on the floor on Saturday. And right before it went to a vote, they have a couple people will stand up and make remarks on both sides before the vote for final approval in the Senate, right? So I want to play for you some clips from Senator June Robinson, a Democrat's remarks right before the Senate vote to pass this immense budget disaster.
We've had a lively conversation already. I will just remind us that budgets reflect our priorities, and as has been talked about on this floor already today, this year we are facing a tough challenge. We all know that our state is confronting a budget deficit, and to close the gap, we have made incredibly difficult decisions while keeping our state on a strong financial footing for the future. We didn't just focus on balancing numbers. We focused on building a thoughtful, sustainable plan that protects the services people rely on most and promotes the long-term fiscal stability of our state.
It doesn't do any of that stuff. It does nothing, none of that stuff. There was like 7 lies in that one clip. I mean, where do I even start? It promotes the long-term fiscal stability. You mean continuing to spend above our means promotes long-term fiscal stability? Passing taxes that will not bring in the level of revenue that you're expecting, because we already see that with the capital gains tax. You passed a capital gains tax in our state that was essentially aimed at Jeff Bezos, and what did he do? He picked up, moved to Florida, and sold his Amazon stocks. And then again, you look at Seattle, where they passed the very tax that you're now pushing, that you say is going to lead to long-term fiscal stability. And because Seattle thought that it would lead to long-term fiscal stability for them, they're now in a budget hole, and they're going to go tax working class people because the tax brought in $47 million less in just 1 year than they expected. Why? Because people just took the jobs away. So in no way, and it's crazy to me, does she actually believe that? Or is this just part of the lie and the grift to be able to just get people to sign off on new taxes because big business bad? It's very clearly not going to do any of the things that you just said it's going to do. All right, let's gird your loins. Let's continue.
But at the core of this budget is a commitment to the people of Washington, the people that we all come here to serve.
No,
it safeguards key supports, making investments like $93 million for grants to our food banks, $78 million for local housing programs to keep people in homes, $20 million to better aid our refugee and immigrant communities who are afraid and under attack.
So as an example about the critical things that this budget with the largest tax package in Washington state's history are going to fund, you give examples of 3 things that the government should have no role in? Do people buy that? Do people want the government? I guess. Progressives, they voted these people in. Again, so you're selling us on the largest tax package in state history, and you give an example of 3 things that the government should have zero role in. Food banks. We have a robust private entities that would be happy and do fund food banks. Nonprofits. We have overfloweth with money in the state of Washington. People here are wealthy. They are and generous. They can fund the food banks. Taxpayers don't need to fund the food banks. The same with keeping people in their homes. Nonprofits with no government assistance can help bridge the gap for people who are going to fall out of homeownership or not be able to pay their rent. The government doesn't need to have any role in that. And in fact, we've seen when the government does try to stabilize the housing and rental market, it's an absolute disaster. and it leads to squatters staying in homes for 2 years without paying rent. And then the third one, you're going to, during a budget crisis, spend tens of millions of dollars providing special services to immigrant communities because they're under attack from Donald Trump. Like, that's the opposite of selling us on why we need the largest package of tax increases in our state's history. All right, I got more. Let's keep going with Senator June Robinson.
I know that small cuts in state funding can deeply affect people's lives. I care about people. That's why I'm here. And none of these choices was made lightly.
Literally crying. No sympathy for her. Give me a break.
We made $6.5 billion in reductions over 4 years.
Not enough.
The reductions are distributed thoughtfully across all areas of the budget to limit harm as much as possible.
I don't feel bad that you're crying. I don't. Because you should be crying about you and your party putting us in this position. So you're sitting here, oh my gosh, we had to make $6.5 billion in cuts, which doesn't even come close over 4 years to getting us out of the mess that we're in because you supplemented it with tax increases. But you should be crying because your party did it. Let's say this is a sad, sad situation. And let's say they had to, the $6.5 billion in cuts are going to devastate people's lives like she's suggesting, which it's not. You did that. Republicans didn't do that. No one else did that. But Democrats who have had complete control, a trifecta, for much of the last 25 years. So, like, are those cries of, like, do you feel bad? Is it because you know you did this and you feel bad? But also this idea that, oh my gosh, we know that cuts to government are devastating for people. No, you know what's devastating for people? When they get taxed out of their home in the state they love. You know what's devastating for people? When gas prices are so high because of the policies that you push that they have to come to the gas pump and put $5 in at a time. And they still can't quite get to work that day. That's what's devastating for people. Not cuts to government. And that's the problem, is Democrats believe the government is here to save us and solve all of our problems when government literally is the problem. Government is the problem. Government is making people poorer. Government is making people less safe. It is insane to me, this whole idea that if not for the investments of the government, our lives would be ruined. No, like, leave us the alone. Leave us alone. That is what would make my life better. Stop reaching into our pockets at every opportunity to the point where people who used to be doing well, families that used to be doing well, are now saying they cannot afford to live here anymore. It's absolutely an insane way of thinking. I have a few more. Let's continue with Senator June Robinson.
We know that an all-cuts budget would have been devastating. It would be devastating, putting programs and supports in serious jeopardy across our communities. That's why this plan, this budget bill, pairs reductions with smart, necessary, and progressive revenue options. It asks the state's wealthiest individuals and largest corporations to contribute their fair share, ensuring those who benefit most from our economy, our robust, wonderful Washington state economy, will help to maintain the services that we all need.
This just, it writes itself. Why do you think we have a robust, wonderful economy, Senator Robinson? Why do you think that is? Could it be the companies that have decided to call Washington state home? Could it be because of companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing? Could that be why Washington state has, although I don't know for how much longer, but has had a robust economy? So now you want to, by your own admission, punish the exact people who have made our economy robust, who have brought high-paying jobs. You want to punish them in a way that they're telling you will lead to them taking jobs out of state. Have you not thought that through? I guess I struggle to understand how a functioning adult could not comprehend that. Keep going.
The budget works to make our upside-down tax code even more equitable by cutting the sales tax from 6.5% to 6%, putting money back in the hands and pockets of Washington.
How generous.
We also provide meaningful property tax relief to low-income seniors and veterans with disabilities.
Can you imagine saying that moments before you pass a massive property tax increase? Saying, oh, but we're helping the elderly and veterans. And what about the millions of other homeowners who are going to be screwed and have to leave the state? And you see the way that she couches it there. Oh, we are so generous. We are putting money back in the pockets of Washingtonians by cutting the sales tax, 0.5%. While we also increase the property tax rate by what? 100%, 200%, 300%? Where's the limit? So you see how they carefully wordsmith things. Oh, the rich are paying their fair share, so the rest of us can continue to enjoy all of these things that we desperately need. And we're also helping to make our tax structure more equitable by giving you a cut to the sales tax, 0.5%. And we're going to help make sure that seniors and veterans can stay in their homes, while not mentioning that you're signing off on a limitless property tax increase for the rest of us. It's so dishonest. And it's so brazenly dishonest. The sales job that they come up with. And I really don't know. I don't know if they believe it. They've convinced, you tell yourself a lie so many times, like we're doing something righteous and important and we're being equitable and this is good and all that, and you just start to believe it. Or if this is them behind the scenes saying, hey, here's how we've got to spin this to get people on board. I think we've got one more, right? Why not?
Overall, this balance of cuts and new revenue allows us to protect core services, some of which I spoke of at the beginning, and stay fiscally responsible for years to come.
Wait, I'm sorry. You're going to have to roll that one back. Can you play that one more time for me, Nicole?
Overall, this balance of cuts and new revenue allows us to protect core services, some of which I spoke of at the beginning, and stay fiscally responsible for years to come.
You catch that? Stay fiscally responsible. Do you call what's happening right now fiscally responsible? Because that would be concerning if you believe that the environment we're in right now, where we have a $14 billion budget deficit, reflects fiscal responsibility. And if you think that pushing taxes that will ultimately devastate our economy by driving major employers out of the state, driving our wealthiest people out of the state, and driving high-paying jobs out of the state is long-term fiscal responsibility, I have nothing I can say to you that would change your mind. If you actually believe what Senator June Robinson said in any part of that, there is genuinely nothing I could say that would change your mind. Because that would be a level of brainwashing that even my highly intelligent and reasoned political commentary could not undo.